Greetings from the Dark Continent, Conscious Caracal here, or Adams Van Sale. And tonight we are definitely going to be shining a light on the goings on down south, but with a little bit of an outlook on the world outside, specifically the world across the big salty pond. So tonight I'm being joined by a guest that you already know from previous appearances on the channel, and probably because we share a lot of subscribers, Roman Cabanac, the host of Morning Shot. If you don't know who he is, when the episode is done, you can go check out his channel, some quality content there specifically about South Africa, and that's why a lot of you are here. Specifically my international listeners, is to really figure out what's going on this mysterious continent. And tonight we're going to be talking to, giving insights not only to my foreign listeners, but also to my domestic listeners that have pondered the question that is the title of tonight's episode: why don't you just immigrate? I wanted to make it why don't you just immigrate, bro? But I think that would be a bit too indulgent. But welcome on the show, Roman. I'm looking forward to it.
Adams, what a pleasure as always. Thank you. Well, thank you for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be here.
So maybe just to lay the foundation, you a while back during the unrest here in South Africa, you made a video not very vaguely titled, and the title of that video was "Why You Should Not Immigrate," not in caps. And I thought it was a fascinating video. I think it was very relevant because a lot of people were talking about immigration. And it's a question that I get asked a lot, especially when I appear on international channels and they look at South Africa and they listen to what I'm telling them. And they ask me, why don't you just immigrate? And I mean, that's a difficult question if you have the means to immigrate. I mean, I am someone that has the means if I really wanted to leave South Africa, but I don't want to. And I know you are in a similar position. But we're going to be talking about specifically that tonight, a difficult question that a lot of South Africans are grappling with, and maybe even increasingly so as we see a lot of decay around us in regards to moral decay and the decay of the state. But let's start off with that video in particular. I know it was a topic that came up organically with all the unrest in South Africa, but what really drove you to think, I'm going to make an entire video titled this very controversial thing?
It's very simple. If you saw what happened during the course of the insurrection, I keep using that word when it's not actually accurate, but the uprising, whatever you want to call it. If you saw what happened during that period of time, you had order and governance emanating from communities. So that the praxis to that disorder and subsequent order and governance just made me realize what I was preaching about or explaining to people what they can do if they want to stay here and live successfully was happening in real time in KwaZulu-Natal during the course of the riots. So for those who might not know, I'm sure you do know though, thousands of people looted whatever they could. And these people tried to attack neighborhoods, communities down there. Indian, whites didn't really matter, but these communities actually banded together, got weapons, defended themselves, patrolled, barricaded national highways for a week or two at a time, and it was relatively peaceful where they were. And all this happened in a matter of 12 to 24 hours. And so it was really the ideas I've been speaking about coming true in real life within 24 hours. And because that happened, I'm thinking to myself, well, all the more reason not to go, because now we know what the solution is to chaos. Order, community order, emergent order, and there was a clear example of it.
So maybe to those that didn't watch that video yet, there is a link to it in the description that you can go watch. What was the gist of your arguments there on titling your video specifically? I mean, your title implies that you're going to give some concrete reasons why. Can you give the summation of what your arguments were?
All right, so if I remember correctly, I didn't watch it. It's funny. I'm making 5 videos a week, and I forget what I did even yesterday. So excuse me if I get my arguments a bit wrong. But the fundamental point I made in that video was that I think South Africa is going to be a blueprint for decentralized governance. I think the age of nation state is coming to an end. The means to the returns on violence are diminishing. A lot of people everywhere, even in the most sophisticated states, like the United States, are questioning whether states are useful. in a material way. There's also echoes of secessionism coming from that part of the world too. So, and the reason why South Africa will be a blueprint for the rest of the world is because we are, I would say, 50 years ahead of most of the developed world in terms of state predation, state decay, and anarchy. And I use the word anarchy in a positive way. So by staying in South Africa, we can build the blueprints for the rest of the world when the inevitable decay of the state arises in, it could be 50 years, it could be 100 years, it could be 200 years. But there are so many alternatives that are possible that the social contract between citizen and state is far too tenuous a link for it to exist for much longer. And I think South Africa is primed to be that state. That's an example, really.
And yeah, that's the thing about South Africa. I remember you tweeting out something in a similar vein where you said it's much better to live under incompetent socialists than competent social democrats. And
Yes.
I think what that was the phrasing. And that's what we have in South Africa. And I remember this is one of the points you've also made. I don't know if it was in that specific video, but I remember you saying as well, you'd rather live in under an incompetent state where you have all this freedom than living under a competent state that's a little bit better ideologically, but they're still going to be knocking on your door to check if you are vaccinated, or they saw you described Boer Beer as based, and now they just need to check your search history just to make sure you're not a radical.
Yeah. Let's check your social credit score. Social credit score, because you liked a picture on Facebook of Boer Cola, so therefore you're radical. That happens in other countries. Here, not really.
Here they can't really even enforce e-tolls. That I hear is shutting down now, specifically because people just said no, they're not going to be paying it, and it costs the state more to actually get those payments or hunting down those people that don't pay than they actually get from the e-tolls. That's an excellent example. But something
just
you
think
said
about
there.
this. Yes, sorry, that's great.
No, go for it. Just that thought you had there.
I mean, just think about this, right? We live in a state where they cut off their own money supply by banning cigarettes and alcohol and who knows what else during the lockdown to protect lives, therefore limiting their ability to govern. I mean, the sheer incompetence is almost mesmerizing. It really is. The state has lost out on tens, if not hundreds of billions of rands in 18 months to save everyone from the virus. But they only survive because of the money that flows from the citizens to them. And there's no kitty somewhere else they can, knock on to. No, like they have no money left, and they still constrain it further by creating the black markets for vices. Like it's remarkable. It's like a remarkable incompetence. Almost genius incompetence, if that's not too much of an irony.
Well, it's not just in regards to failure. I mean, the ANC gets a gold medal. They build a new power station called Medupi for 14 years, and then it lasts 7 days before there's a massive explosion crippling the entire facility.
Yeah, it's great. And then on the same day, I apologize, getting a bit in the details. But on the same day, the government was supposed to say you can now build your own power stations up to a certain megawatt generation capacity. That hasn't happened today. So the power station blows up 2 days ago. The deadline for the new licenses to generate power was today, and that was not gazetted adequately. So we just won't have power very soon.
And yeah, well, to get back to something you said there, you talked about being a pioneer. And I think that's very important. I get my perspective from working for AfriForum and the broader solidarity movement. And I mean, we're building parallel institutions that the Americans are only now starting to theorize about. We already have built a technical college. We already have established a university. We've already built theaters. We already are setting up a very vast network of neighborhood watches. These are the things that the Americans, when you talk about maybe the the more conservative or even right-wing side are only talking about theoretically now. They're only like dipping their toe into the water. We're already doing it. We've already created a collective of more than 500,000 members if you take the whole movement together. That's something, not something to be just to be laughed at. But Flip Base, the head of the Solidarity movement, was laughed at when he told people that he's going to do this, and one day he's going to, with this movement, they're going to build a university, and they were going to do all these things. He was seen as a clown. He was called a madman.
May I just interject? Why hasn't he changed his name to Flip Based? I mean, really, I don't see why. We should have a petition for this.
If our friend Odin Moja Wotan was the author of our universe, he would have already been Flip Based. But yeah, you talked about being a pioneer, and I think there's an important sentiment that I saw the other day expressed by someone, but it was by an anonymous person, so I can't really credit anyone. But this isn't my quotes, and they said at some point you'll have to stop running and take a stand. Either you or your children or your grandchildren, better you than them. And I think that's in South Africa is exactly what's going on when you talk about the whole question surrounding immigration, that yes, we're facing a lot of problems here in South Africa, but the way that the Western world is going, these problems are in the pipeline. They are just a few generations away from electing absolute socialist kleptocrats on the level of South Africa. Now, I'm not one of those guys. Why I'm saying generations or maybe generation is the fact that I don't think America or some of these Western European countries are like 5 years away from collapse. I think they're still a well way off if you start comparing their problems and their crises to what's going on in South Africa. Decay takes time. The Roman Empire didn't just fall one day. It's a very slow, painful process, and that's something people need to understand. So if you're an accelerationist, don't get too giddy and excited just yet. There's still a lot of shit that's going to fall apart very soon. So, but it's also going to be a stretched out process. And I think that whole sentiment surrounding, rather than just immigrating to a country that works currently, there's a risk to that those countries are going to be facing a lot of the same problems that South Africa is facing today. It might be a bit of an abstract thing to imagine now, but if you live in South Africa, you can see it happening. You can see the blueprint. Just as you said, we are building the blueprint for pioneering solutions. The blueprint for disaster and collapse is also there within South Africa for all to see.
But also very importantly, especially in terms of geopolitics, South Africa is a minnow. That's a rounding error on the world's GDP. Like it means nothing to anybody, and that's what makes it the blueprint. Because America's not going to bomb us to freedom, or the Chinese aren't going to come in to take over as a colony. Well, maybe they will, who knows. But because we are such a minnow in world geopolitics, world economics, people don't care about us at all. And that is a fundamental reason why it's a blueprint. All of our problems in this country are internal and political. That's all they are. Easy to fix, easy to solve, but if people don't want to change the way they vote, they will never get solved. But we do know what the solutions are already. It's not too difficult to determine what that is. So yeah, that's all I want to say. The fact that we are a minnow is actually very, very important in this equation.
But also within that picture, South Africa has also been the laboratory of empires for quite a while. A lot of the policies that they're trying now in the West were tested here. South Africa, if Afghanistan is the graveyard of empires, South Africa has been the laboratory of empires for a long time. And you can see a lot of the solutions or the faux solutions being tried here are only just a few years away for many of these Western governments. If you listen to how fondly they speak of the ANC and their policies, not a lot of condemnation there at all. But then at the same time, I do think what we're seeing here in South Africa in regards to all these pioneering solutions and people really being ahead of the curve is there's an unfortunate reality here as well. And it's almost always the burden of the pioneer or the burden of the builder is the fact that a lot of times you're not going to see the end product. You're not going to see the creation. Like a lot of those people that worked on those magnificent cathedrals in Europe, they didn't see their end product. They didn't see what they built. And I think what's happening in South Africa is you're not going to see, for example, the things that you're building towards completed. It's a very long process. It's not just, it's like bending metal. If you bend it too fast or too quickly, it snaps and breaks, and then you're left with nothing. It's a very slow, meticulous process. And it's the whole philosophy of planting a tree that you'll never sit under. But also, as the Afrikaans poet Idia Du Plessis wrote, "Soet is die stryd," sweet is the fight. And that's where the pioneer gets his drive from following his calling, not specifically from building something that he wants to see in his lifetime, but rather knowing that he's building towards it, even if he never sees it.
I think that's very key, and it's something that's sort of antagonistic to the modern global capitalism world we live under, where a lot of things are there are very high time preferences. If you want something, you can get it. You don't need to speak to anyone. You can get a burger delivered to your house. It's very comfortable. If you want something, you can get it. We need to change that thinking fundamentally in terms of building things that will outlast you completely. It's like the Lindy effect.
Yeah, what's that great piece that you've shared, that the microwave economy? Isn't that exactly what he writes about?
Yes, by David Perel. Yes. Yeah, one of my favorite writers. And then just quickly on that piece, he says, a lot of life is now like a microwave meal. It's perfectly nutritious and palatable, but it's never satisfying. What happened to beauty, or to, in terms of a cooking analogy, like make your own pasta, for goodness sake, like make your own sauce, put them together, eat that. It takes a day to prepare a meal. But the offshoots or the consequences of preparing all of that is so much more investment in what it is, rather than just putting a piece of foil with sludge in a microwave and eating that. It's perfectly sustainable, but never satisfying. And I think in the pioneering spirit, especially here, you have to think of things that will exist beyond you. So, but how will they do that? You need to lay the foundations for the rules around what you build. I think that's far more important than thinking of what the end goal is.
Yeah, and for example, if you think about a more independent Cape, not even talking about a seceded Cape, a more independent Cape is a long-term project. I mean, a lot of people will say, well, we don't have time. It's something that we need to be done now. But then if you look at history, the only things that are built to last are things that are built properly and built slowly. It's not just something you throw together overnight, and people are going to have to make peace with that fact. And that's the beautiful thing about South Africa and similar countries to South Africa. South Africa is not the only pioneering country. There's a lot of countries where a lot of pioneering solutions are being made. South Africa is just one of the examples, and we both know it very intimately because we're very involved in it and see it happen all around us. But what you're going to see are all the projects that last are the projects that have already been in the works for 10 years, 15 years. I mean, AfriForum, for example, is 15 years old. Solidarity is even older. And it's not just something you do overnight. And this is it's a lesson that a lot of right-wingers or conservatives like to denigrate progressives on, say, oh, you just want solutions now, or they denigrate leftists and say, you just want solutions now. But a lot of us also want solutions now. You don't want to build something that's going to take too long. The necessity is of the essence. We don't have time. Well, at the same time, would you rather take the risk of building something properly and it taking time, or rushing it now like a botched vaccine, and then it ends up not being what you wanted it to be? And I think that's key. Is you need to see yourself as the guy, not even the guy laying the foundation. You need to see yourself as the guy digging the hole for the foundation.
Basically, you must inculcate Kuan Yew. I think he's one of the few pioneers that actually saw the consequences of his actions in terms of being in Singapore. And what's funny about him, he was the first sort of CEO president. He ran the whole thing like a business. There's a famous speech of him when the pilots were striking for Singapore Airlines or something. And he talks about this for 2 minutes. He says, I spoke to the pilots and I told them, you're not needed here. You fly today or you're gone tomorrow. We will not be held back by you and your selfishness, your individual selfishness in all of this. And he was not a Democrat. He was not someone who cared deeply about individual rights. He sort of almost banned religion. He almost banned a few other things as well, homosexuality and the like. Not because he hated peoples because these are distractions from the project. Name one political person in a democratic liberal state that has a project where he's quite happy to forego these small, easy, virtuous wins by saying, whatever, if you're gay, cool, but we're not going to give you any rights because it's a distraction from what we're trying to build. We don't want to get pulled into different directions. We want to go straight ahead. I'm only using gays as an example. Yeah, I got nothing against them. I don't care at all. But Kuan Yew is actually the one to emulate. And no one else. In terms of someone who actually ran a country properly.
And this is I think a top or more of the theme that comes to the fore many times when I also talk to when I appear on international podcasts. There's a lot of people in the chat, specifically younger people, always ask, but why don't you just immigrate? Why don't you just leave? And what I always tell them is the fact that those people that you idealize in your past, the people that you look up to, the people that you fantasize about being, these pioneers that conquered unknown lands, and people that built magnificent cathedrals, and people that established institutions that are still here today. Those people didn't grow up in easy times. They didn't grow up and they didn't live in times where things were luxurious and comfortable. Comfort actually rots. Comfort really isn't a good thing. Comfort and prosperity actually creates monsters. What's that quote? Adversity creates men, but prosperity creates monsters. And that's exactly what we're seeing with a lot of Western countries today. And yes, a hard life is definitely a good life. You were designed for suffering. You were designed to toil. You were designed to walk up that tall mountain, not to get to some point at the top, but really just for the accomplishments of every time. You must, like that reading of Camus of we must imagine Sisyphus happy. And that's the same with that Afrikaans quote of soet is die stryd. Even if we don't succeed, at least we tried and we did it properly and we did it according to our principles. And I think that's something that you get a lot of meaning from. And that's why when these people ask me, but why don't you just leave? I say, well, look at the people that you admire. Look at the people that you fantasize about being. To a small extent, I am living that type of life, being a pioneer. I always tell people jokingly when they ask me what I do, I say I work in the solution industry. And that's a very fulfilling and satisfying thing, and everyone can be part of it. You don't have to work for AfriForum to be able to do that. You can just be part of the solution by joining a neighborhood watch, or helping defend your community, or helping build something that will last. By planting a tree, you are being that type of person, and that's
just creating beauty. By just creating beauty, you're already building something that attracts people and wants them to stay. Right. I think one of the big problems we have in this place is beauty was never an option, or it's never been something that's been venerated. I mean, we got paintings and art and things like that, but in terms of buildings, beauty ended like in the 1920s, right? In terms of making places human scaled, livable, beautiful to be in, lovely to live in. Those sort of things don't exist here, which is a great pity. It still exists in some areas of Europe. So I think, in the words of Roger Scruton, beauty has no function. Its function is solely to be beautiful, and that's it. It doesn't have anything else, but it attracts everyone to it. And as a pioneer, it's not about technical, and that's what I want to get across. It's not about the technical ability to create alternatives for state services. It's about creating things that are beautiful, that makes people want to be there in the first place, not to survive, but like to thrive in like a human scaled way. That's very aspirational, but that's also a crucial
and not just building beautiful things, but also building things that will last. I think that's a very noble battle, because
beauty does last.
Well, at the same time, yes, but I think that's what we talked about earlier as well, where once you're building something to last, there's almost an inherent theme in there, or an inherent nature within it, that the thing that you're building, you might not see the end product. And that's that old adage of planting trees that you'll never sit under. I mean, I got a very small bit of that just from when I grew up. Me and my father planted a tree in the middle of town. just there. There was like this patch of park there that wasn't being maintained, and we just planted a tree there. Today, it's a massive tree in the middle of town. Nobody knows where it came from. Just me and my dad know where. And still today, even every time I visit that town where I grew up, I see that massive tree in the center of town. I know who planted it.
Yeah, and it's very simple. I think also people like me, I don't know about you, but maybe we tend to sort of overcomplicate these sort of things. When actually it's we're thinking about technical solutions and maybe cryptocurrencies and 3D printing and creating alternative institutions, and all those things are very, very important. But also, like just creating a bench, in a place that doesn't have any. Or, I walked last year in the park with my dog, and there's a small house next to a tree, but a small house, I'm talking about 30 centimeters by 30 centimeters. And it looked like an owl house. So I thought, fine, maybe it's an owl. So I go to it. No, it's actually a library. Like you can take a book out and you can bring it back whenever you want, or you can deposit books and anyone can take it out, read, put it back, or whatever the case might be. There's no one checking it. And there were still books inside in the middle of a public park, and it wasn't vandalized. Almost as if people know it's a little bit sacred. And I like that.
Absolutely. And there's another theme that also needs addressing in regards to when we're discussing immigration, and that's the theme of a calling. And it kind of relates to what we have been talking about already. A lot of people never find their calling, unfortunately. A lot of people search for it forever. Some give up. But once you find it, I mean, this sounds like very airy-fairy stuff. It sounds very mystical. But it's the only way I can describe it as someone who I'm pretty sure I found my calling, that I was put here on earth for. I remember when I was little, I asked my dad, why are we here in South Africa and not in the Netherlands where our ancestors come from? So, well, that's where time deposited us. That's where God, that's the road that we were put on. So we better make the best of it. And you always say there's a very steep price to pay for living in one of the most incredible countries in the world. And that's something I take to heart every day. And that's what we're doing at the Solidarity Movement. There's a reason why our slogan last year and this year as well is "Bou om te bly," building to stay. Because the big reality is a lot of our people can't leave. A lot of them don't have the means or don't want to. A lot of them can leave, but they have all their family here that can't. And that's something that's a proportion that's increasing by the day. And if you can be one of those people that stay behind to help build for those people that can't, I think that's you pursuing your calling, if that is your calling.
But also, to go back to the previous point about sooner or later someone will pay the price. I mean, what is the price if you don't say, why don't you leave? I live here. This is where I am. This is where my roots are. I don't need to leave. I don't want to leave. And I won't be forced to leave. That argument hardly ever sort of comes up. I mean, it's inherent in most nations in the world. Like in Britain, if they have an economic crisis, they don't immigrate.
Yeah.
Right.
They don't all immigrate to go live in their Spanish villas.
Right. Same as in Argentina, same as in most countries, right? I mean, you got mass immigration from the Eastern Bloc, and now you got mass immigration from the Middle East, and we know, and Africa, and we know why. But in a lot of these places where we South Africans tend to want to go live, those people don't immigrate because they belong there, and they know that they belong there, and they know that maybe they live in hope that whatever they are suffering right now will be resolved in due course. But in South Africa, it's always 5 minutes to midnight, like 5 minutes before the apocalypse. If we don't leave now, who knows what entropy will arise in the future. But if you leave, there's a greater chance of the entropy happening in the first place.
Yeah, and that's something that anyone that when you're talking about that's my home, that's where I live. That's what most Afrikaners will be able to tell you. A lot of us have been here longer than the United States has been a country. In my own experience,
Absolutely.
my family has been here since 1688. I'm the ninth generation here at the southern tip of Africa. I'm pretty sure I've been cut off from Europe long enough that I'm not going to feel at home there. And I know it personally because I've visited Europe. I've visited the countries where my ancestors are from, and it's a beautiful place. I mean, I love it to visit there, but it doesn't feel like home. It doesn't feel like at the end of my trip, I was looking forward to getting back to South Africa again. And there's something strange there. There's something immaterial. I mean, a lot of debates surrounding immigration always go to the material side of it, but there's an immaterial side to it as well, a mystical, more spiritual side, where about community and place, having a specific place where your soul is rooted. And I think a lot of Afrikaners will tell you the same in different words or in different ways. There's something that's keeping them there. Specifically, a lot of Rhodesians will tell you that as well. That didn't just go back to England when Rhodesia became Zimbabwe and when the land grabs happened. They came to South Africa and went to Botswana and other African countries because they wanted to stay on the continent that they fell in love with.
Yeah, and they thrived there for the most part, much more than their fellow countrymen in
red brick houses.
They have houses. Wow. Mostly it's apartments and things like that. But I actually was in Mpumalanga over the weekend, the long weekend, and I took a photo of the the craggy horizons from my tent. Please, I don't go camping. This is a luxury tent. But anyway, and I said, imagine. I mean, I can't remember what I said. I said, thank goodness I immigrated to a 42 square apartment in the middle of London instead of staying here.
You pissed a few people off.
And the amount of hate, like, oh, but I actually don't live in. I said, if you don't live in an apartment, this tweet is not about you. Like, I thought that would be quite obvious. But the fact that I got so much hate indicates that people are in pain if they saw that tweet and got offended by it. Because I think instinctively they made the right choice, or instinctively they think they made the right choice for logical reasons. But a lot of the reasons are completely metaphysical and illogical to stay behind. It's like all great marketing.
Yeah.
Marketing's not logical. It's all metaphysical or illogical, but it works in some way. Things don't have to make sense for them to work. And I don't think we need to explain to people why we are staying. A lot of people want a logical argument when there aren't any.
It's like that yes meme where someone asks you, do you really want to stay in a shithole that has rampant crime with a government that's falling apart and where your economy seems to never be able to recover? And your answer is yes.
Absolutely. It's either that, well, not either or. It's not a binary, but either that, or we can have endless discussions on critical race theory in schools. Like, yeah, I don't care if I'm unhappy with my daughter's school, I can literally create a homeschool or a pod for children who age within a geographical area of 5 kilometers. I know I'll get at least 20 people, and you can create a business out of that without needing to register or do any sort of crap licensing. I know I can do that if I really, really wanted to. Where else in the world can you do that? Where else in the world can citizens barricade a highway and be armed with bagpipes and AR-15s and shotguns for 2 weeks and then tell the police, if you take down this barricade, we're going to shoot you? Where else in the world, my friend, can that be legitimate?
Yeah.
Nowhere. Only here.
And I see African Drone Rookie says there's freedom in the chaos. And I mean, that's something I would almost imagine you saying verbatim on one of your streams, Roman.
Freedom is chaos and vice versa. And I'm not I used to be this heavy libertarian, like freedom for all. And I'm not that at all now. I'm more sort of limit the freedom for the greater good type of thing within measure. But that old adage, chaos breeds opportunity, massively. Some of the richest people in the world live in the Congo.
Mm. And there was a quote.
Corrupt ones, but still.
There was a quote by Gary Fourie, the CEO of Capitec, and one of the most successful banks in South Africa. If you want to look at banks, if you want to buy stocks in a bank that still has a lot of potential, that's where you need to go. This is not financial advice, just a disclaimer. So he said, this was this year, and it was a quote that actually shocked me with how refreshing it was. He said, you can go to Switzerland where everything works, but there's no opportunity. Or you can go to South Africa where nothing works, but there's plenty of opportunity. And I think you can interpret that quote not just in financial opportunity, but also in spiritual opportunity, building opportunity, and the opportunity to really do something where at the end of the day you feel fulfilled and you feel like I'm doing something that the average wage slave in America is only dreaming about, and the average traditionalist LARPer online only does in his fantasies.
Yeah, I wonder why there aren't any sort of survivalist YouTube stars in South Africa. I'm sure they'll do very well, but they don't exist for some reason. I was also quite taken aback by that comment, and also remember, I think this maybe be a bit controversial, but a lot of people who feel like they wish to immigrate, I don't think they actually have real roots here. I think they've imbibed that hyper individualistic capitalist notion of what humanity is, instead of any other ideas to the contrary of that. And I think that is a lot of the reasons why people go. It's the GDP, it's safety, it's things like that. All very logical things. I know there's someone in the comments saying, it's all fine and well until your wife gets smacked in the head with a panga or whatever. Okay, cool. That can happen anyway, by the way, especially in Chicago. But in Chicago, you can't defend yourself.
Yeah, it's also all good and well until you move to the United States and your child gets taken away from you because you said something not too politically correct online.
Yeah,
the government comes knocking on your door.
Because you like to Ben Shapiro movie, or you made a meme of Donald Trump, where he's doing a wrestling move on CNN. I don't know if you saw that meme in 2017.
Yeah,
the police rocked up at the guy's house. Yeah, they found the guy who made a meme. In Britain, people are locked up for using hate speech on the internet. In France,
look at the videos from Australia where they check people for their vaccine passports or their vaccine certificates. If they don't have it, your face is getting smashed into the concrete, bruv.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're 85 or however old that guy was. In France, they beheaded a king for 1% of the bullshit, excuse my language, that's happening now. You can't go into a restaurant without a vaccine pass. If I need a vaccine pass here, I'll just buy one on the black market. If I really needed one, which we don't. Now, funny enough, I find the South African government has been quite libertarian on this. Like, no, we don't want vaccine passes whatsoever. I find that a bit refreshing. Not that they will keep that forever.
I think they're quite aware that they can't enforce it.
No, they can't enforce a lot of stuff, but they still push through. I think it's coming. They know it's coming, and they would rather let someone else dictate, like the globalists dictating that. But also, I think this is a complete segue. There's also that notion, like the West use Africa as a experiment for experimental drugs, which is true, and experimental vaccinations. Like, I think a few of your heroes who might have owned software companies in the past did that. So I think there's also a lot of that happening where take a vaccine if you want to, but there's also this thing of like, this is still like a Western medical idea and we're not terribly comfortable with it, which is a bit refreshing.
And I see when we were talking about the quote from the Capitec CEO in regards to opportunity, Swartgat said, if you have a silver spoon. Have you seen the offspring of privileged South Africans or of like millionaire or billionaire South Africans? And the Romanists swore, so I'm going to match him. They're all fuck-ups. They all are absolutely washed up drug addicts. that their biggest claim to fame is they have like a Instagram account with 10,000 followers, or they write some shitty book. That's it.
Yeah.
A silver spoon in South Africa.
privatized.
In South Africa, a silver spoon, when you're living in a country as chaotic as South Africa, a country where really the freedom and the opportunity and the chaos takes a specific type of mind to see, you're going to see the people being rewarded, not the people that are the offspring of carders. They're going to be rewarded in maybe getting fat and getting all these high access passes to clubs that aren't even open anymore. But the people that are going to be rewarded the most are the people that see the opportunity and take it. The people that, for example, people like Don Barnard that started Boer Cola and Boer Beer. Where else in the world do you start a company like that and get the meteoric rise in success that Don Barnard had? He wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth.
I found Boer Cola in the middle of Delstrom last week, which I was very surprised. But I mean, the people who take the opportunities, guys, like, I think, with respect to your audience, I think they're thinking like we're thinking about, like, white people. The biggest, the freest people in this nation are taxi guys, drivers, bosses, people in the taxi industry. They take no orders from anyone. They have all the upside because the government bails them out because of COVID, which is brilliant. But they completely disregard all the rules the government imposes on them. And it's a 90 billion rand industry. They're warlords, they're mafia, there's taxi violence, whatever the case might be. They apologize for killing their customers, which is great. Did you see that press statement last week?
No,
we apologize for killing our customers, but now we're friends again, so it's all good.
Only in South Africa.
But these are the freest people in this country. Taxi bosses, right? Who saw the opportunity, who provide a very important service to 60-70% of the workforce in this place. And they only exist and they're only so powerful because the state has completely dismantled the public transport system. These are the guys who will be here in 200 years. Maybe not 200 years, but these are the guys to emulate. Not to be thugs, but to look at opportunity and make a hell of a lot of money by providing a lot of value to people. Like, those are the people to emulate, not an account to the KPMG.
If you're looking at the successful people in South Africa and you think the only way to be successful is if you're born into a privileged household, I think you're going to find a lot of people that have common views of you in the leftist quadrant. And those people are also not achieving a lot, really. That's the type of view that keeps you back. It's the type of view, and I mean, there is a lot of reality when it comes to opportunity. I mean, a lot of people work their asses off and never achieve what they want to, but that's reality. That's how it works all across the world. But if you're living in a country like South Africa, where there is so much opportunity, you're going to have to start thinking outside the box. That's where the opportunity is. If you look, for example, the people that work for AfriForum and the people that work for Solidarity. Those people with their experience or with their CVs would be working for just some drab office job in another country. They would be working for some insurance firm, or they would be working for like a mall cop managing firm in the United States. But here in South Africa, they're the head of AfriForum security, and they are keeping neighborhoods safe, and they're running neighborhood watches.
I mean, all your marketing guys would be spending millions of dollars trying to sell a burger.
Yeah.
With
ads that have nothing to do with burgers.
Yes, absolutely. And very diverse ads as well. But I mean, if you are someone who shares the cultural values of AfriForum, what the hell are you going to do elsewhere that's better? It's insane. It's insane. Like, I know people who have farms, game farms, right? And they got people who work on the farm and live on the farm, and they've been there for a generation or two. The average schmo from the suburbs will come and say, oh, why is this guy earning 10,000 rand a month and, doesn't have ownership of the farm and what? And the guy works 3-4 hours a day. He gets free food. His kids are educated for free. He has free housing. He lives with his extended family, basically secluded from all the bullshit of the world. And now you want to give him more responsibilities because it's fair? Like, are you insane? These people are living the dream, right? I'm not saying they're going to change the world, but they are as contented as any other people on the planet could be, because they are in direct control of their destiny right there in the middle of a massive game farm or a cattle farm or whatever the case might be. You want them to move to a city, to buy a house in a suburb and to drive a car and to worry about emails or to co-own something and have shares and have fights with share. Like, are you insane? Like, the meaning of life is far more than GDP, guys.
The line graph goes up, Roman. That's all that matters. No, it's. I mean, I just take myself as an example as well. With my CV, if I lived in a country like America or some Western European country, I'd be working for a bank. I'd be doing some like marketing or corporate job, and that would be it. And I'd go home to live in my small pod apartment, and my neighbors would be reporting me to the police because I'm liking the wrong things online.
It's called a pod. I mean, do you know that, sorry to interrupt, but the majority of Harvard graduates actually become consultants.
And they go work for, they get like internship jobs at all these big firms. And they just
what value do you create as a consultant? As a consultant, you're just a parasite with no skin in the game. And that's what you are. You're spending... Okay, most people go to Harvard for free, but you're spending your intellectual capital at one of the best universities in the world, and then you're obsessed with becoming a consultant for something like McKinsey, where you tell other people whose job you never had how to do their jobs better. I mean, is that aspirational? Apparently it is. Let me just stick around here and try to build something.
Before we continue, I see Quentin Ferreira is in the chat. Hello, Quentin.
Hey, long time, Quentin. Yeah. Good to see you.
Thanks for tuning in. A friend of both me and Roman, very upstanding, excellent guy. And someone that you can actually, like I said, someone, if you want to talk to someone what life is like in Europe, he's currently living in Portugal. He's got experience living in the Netherlands as well. Very, very valuable resource. Get into contact with this man. But there's another thing that I think we need to mention, and you mentioned culture. If you align with the culture and the values of AfriForum, where's a better place to work? I mean, that's a very, very strong point. But at the same time, the controversial thing and the very tough pill to swallow is that me as an Afrikaner and someone that loves my culture and loves my language and has a very strong pride in my heritage, if Afrikaners don't have a future in Africa, we don't have a future at all. If all the Afrikaners got up and left tomorrow and went to live in different and became like just a diaspora folk or people, within 2 or 3 generations, there wouldn't be any Afrikaners left. And that's an unfortunate reality. That's one of the big prices you pay for going to live in a place that's more comfortable, is the fact that in Afrikaner culture, we don't prohibit our children from marrying outside the culture. Other cultures have that safety mechanism, which means they can function within countries where they're a super minority. And you see it in South Africa as well. There are some cultures with those types of safety mechanisms. The Afrikaners don't have that. Within 1 or 2 generations, your children or grandchildren will be marrying into the host nation. They will be fully assimilated. And the only real cultural aspects they will have will pretty much be they will know some Afrikaans swear words, they will know how to braai, and they will maybe support the Springboks on occasion. And what happens there, and this is the unfortunate thing, it's a serious topic, and I know it's something that a lot of people don't like to talk about because it is it fills a lot of people with existential dread, specifically if you love your culture and you know what your culture has been through to survive. But at that point, your culture just becomes your hobby. If that is what your culture is, your culture just means supporting the Springboks, knowing some Afrikaans swear words, and speaking a little bit of Afrikaans at home, then your culture becomes your hobby. And a culture cannot survive on that basis. So I think there will always be Afrikaners in Africa, specifically in South Africa. And I hope that the Afrikaner community in South Africa can always be the spiritual, cultural home of the Afrikaners, where the culture can be always preserved and the culture can be taken forward. That doesn't mean that people that immigrate to other countries are betraying their culture. I think there's a lot of people out there that admirably do a lot of effort to teach their children Afrikaans, to preserve their culture, to promote their culture. That's excellent. Specifically, the people that still help wherever they can to bring attention to the causes happening in South Africa and helping their people that are still here. And that's the thing, is I don't denigrate people that leave. I just want them to be honest about the costs associated with it. It's not a no-brainer. It's not something where there's nothing associated with it. That's a cost. And for me to immigrate would be that spiritual cost, that identity cost, knowing that my line from 1688, ninth generation, ends with me, in regards that there's almost 100% chance that my children will not refer to themselves as Afrikaners, and they will be fully assimilated, as I expect from any person that immigrates to my country, for example, or to my community, which I should rather say. You should, and take Urania as an example. If you want to move to Urania, you need to assimilate into the culture. I think that's a value that's important. But at the same time, that also kills your culture when it goes the other way.
No, it does. Cultures are only as valuable as the people who express it. And also, I mean, cultures are so contextual. They only make sense in a period of time under a certain set of conditions. That's why when you try to look back at history with your own morality, it's ridiculously dumb, right? Ridiculously dumb. But to be an Afrikaner in Australia or Bolivia, it actually doesn't make sense to do that. No one else speaks Afrikaans, or very few people speak Afrikaans.
The society is secular.
There's a law of diminishing returns here in terms of that. The Jews do it very well, though. But also, they tend to assimilate to some point, but then there's always like an in-group.
They've got the cultural safety mechanisms. They've, as a tribe that has pretty much been forced to develop those safety mechanisms, they're well in place.
Yeah, I actually had a conversation with one of the Jewish community leaders this morning. He invited me out for a coffee, and a fascinating conversation, like really, really fascinating, especially in terms of we don't want to be judged upon the horrors. We want to be judged on what we actually do. Like we're not anyway, that's another point entirely. Yeah. But the fundamental point is cultures are deeply contextual. And for some people it doesn't matter, which is fine. For you, a metaphysical value is your culture, which cannot be defined economically. Yeah. And if that's very important for you, you would be someone who would want to stay, because this is, you're the white tribe of Africa and have every single right to be here. And anyone who says otherwise is just not worth engaging in.
I see Swartkat says that the French Huguenots say the same thing. Well, how many people in South Africa still speak French? How many Afrikaners?
I do.
You're not a descendant of a French Huguenot, are you?
No. I'm a French a refugee, but we arrived 30 years ago, fleeing socialism.
No, the central point is the French Huguenots assimilated into the Dutch culture that they found here. They don't view them. You get many Labuschaghnis, De Villiers, Leroux. They don't speak French anymore. They don't view themselves as French anymore. They don't have any French culture to them. They have Afrikaner culture, a culture that was born here. So that pretty much proves the point that that's going to happen. How many, you have to ask yourself the question, yes, the French Huguenots came here to preserve their religion, which that was their goal, and they achieved it. But when they got here, the Dutch told them, well, you can keep practicing your religion. That's 100% with us, but you're going to go to our schools. You're going to be going to our community institutions, and you're going to start speaking our language and adopting our values and culture. And they're obliged because their religion could be preserved. And that's the central point that we're talking about here, is that that's what's going to happen. If you immigrate to a country, you're going to be expected to assimilate. And Afrikaners are very keen to assimilate because that's good manners. That's what you do. Like I said earlier, it's a virtue if you move to a new host community and you assimilate into that.
Very good point.
But
And that's why South Africans tend to have quite a very good standing in international circles in terms of the work we can do, the intellectual capacity, the capabilities of the average South African worker who tends to immigrate is very high, which is a product of the culture locally. So they will immigrate with that sort of input from the culture in terms of the logical terms of the culture, in terms of working hard, in terms of being diligent, in terms of X, Y, and Z, being creative. But by and large, those things are inherent to what people need to do in South Africa just to get along, not to build multi-billion-dollar enterprises, just to get ahead of the chaos. So that's a bit of the irony.
And there's an excellent quote, and I always punt this book whenever I always do a stream on South Africa, The Mind of South Africa by Alistair Sparks. Very good.
Wasn't he a lib?
Excuse me?
Wasn't he a lib?
No, he is he's a guy that understands South Africa very well. Ideologically, I disagree with him in many points, but in regards to how he understands South Africa, he's pretty spot on. So he makes a comment there that I found very fascinating, and he said there, and this book was written just before 1994, and he said he understands to a very large extent the cultural anxiety that you see within Afrikaner circles before this new transition. What we're seeing here is, from his perspective as an English-speaking South African, he can immigrate to Australia, to America, to England, to New Zealand, and he will be surrounded by people that are 95% pretty much his cultural peers. They don't braai. That's the big thing. That's where they differ culturally. And they don't support the Springboks, but they are of the same heritage. They are very much the same. But Afrikaners, it's not the same. You're moving to a country that doesn't speak your language, that doesn't, in a lot of senses, share your values. And you're going to have to assimilate into it. And he makes that point in the book where he says, I can't put myself into the shoes of an Afrikaner, because I know for me it's a no-brainer immigrating to a country where I'm pretty much just going to be surrounded by my people once again. And that's the thing that a lot of people need to realize, is that there is that cost to it. There is that thing that can't be quantified. You can't put it on a chart. You can't put a price to it. You can't capitalistically turn it into a commodity. That's unfortunately not something that's possible. And that's something that it takes a lot of nuance and a lot of time to describe to a lot of people. But sometimes all it takes is a yes, like the yes meme.
Yes, no, absolutely. Yes, meme, very true. But I think also, and I don't want to disparage anyone who has emigrated, and you're free to do so. Do what you wish. We're not here to tell people what to do, but is it worth being merely comfortable? That's essentially most of it. Most of the reasons. It's about being comfortable. If it's worth it, it's worth it to you. For me, it's not.
And it's the immense privilege of living in a unique country like South Africa, having the opportunities that you do, but opportunities that you have to have a little bit of an abstract eye to see. But I mean, South Africans are pretty much conditioned and bred to be able to see those opportunities. You're not the stock of people that lived in comfort back in Europe. You're the stock of people that came to a continent where most people at the time still thought there were literal monsters walking around, and people being just living on a continent where magic is real. And this is the thing, is that a lot of people, when you look at the bigger picture, it would be very anticlimactic for my family to have come here in 1688 and for me now to just leave because the road got a little bit bumpy and the tar road turned into a dirt road again. But you make an important point there. I'm not here to prescribe solutions to people whether they should or should not immigrate. I'm not here to call people that immigrate cowards or betrayers or traitors or whatever. For me, it's just there needs to be people that make the point for those that choose to stay. I know many people that choose to stay for non-materialist reasons, people that stay for those reasons that we talked about now, reasons that you can't really very it would be an injustice to really just put it into casual words to describe to some people. And it's something that needs to be talked about. What I'm doing here in Roman, also to a large extent, is just stating that case, not prescribing what you need to do to anyone, but rather to say, well, when you look at South Africa and these people staying behind, whether you are someone that immigrated or someone living on the outside looking in, just a foreign listener, there is method in the madness. There is reasons why people do it. Don't just, and I've seen too many people disparage those that stay behind as naive, as stupid, as just privileged enough to stay behind. People that are just in it here for materialist reasons. Now, there are many like that, but there are people that stay behind here for much deeper reasons that are bigger than themselves. And I think that's something that we need to bring back. People need to start viewing themselves again as part of something bigger than themselves. Don't just view it as you have this small little window of existence on earth and you need to do as much as possible in that time to enjoy yourself. No, you are part of a much bigger string and hierarchy of being that stretches back all the way to your first ancestor.
Yeah, I mean, as the final words on this, we can go on this grand adventure and be the pioneers in a new form of governance in this country. And I think AfriForum and Solidarity especially are at the forefront of this. We may get there, we may not get there, but damn, it was fun trying to do it.
Absolutely. Now, Roman, before we get to final thoughts and before you can also show your content, I just want to thank our sponsors here again, Bitvice, for bringing this episode to you and for sponsoring this episode. Bitvice is the only platform in South Africa that allows you to buy Bitcoin and have it sent to you for your own self-custody by default. And then also your Bitcoin is much safer from hacks, confiscation, and regulatory capture when you self-custody it yourself in this manner. Bitvice offers hands-on guidance for setting up your self-custody solution. We will also hold your hand setting up your wallet if you need be, or point you to the best solutions available on the market today if you'd rather do it yourself. So thank you very much, Bitvice, for sponsoring this episode. And you can find a link in the description if you want to get into crypto. I mean, that's also a pioneering front. That's an episode and a discussion all on its own. But yeah, thank you very much, Bitvice. These are cool, trusted oaks. So you'll be in good hands.
Yeah, and based on experience, I can highly recommend them.
So Roman, thank you very much for your time tonight. It was an excellent discussion. Maybe for your final thoughts, maybe condense your final thoughts into something succinct, and then you can tell people where they can find you. I'm giving you the red carpet to shill now.
Oh, sure. FNB account number 628. No, I don't have like some sort of weird pithy comment to end this with. Only that your mindset about your existence must change. If you have a negative mindset, that is. I have a mindset, okay, I live a comfortable life, etc. But I have a mindset where things aren't meant to go my way. Uncertainty is very real and something that we need to grapple with. But also, the dissolution of the state in front of your very eyes is the greatest reason why you should stay here. Because only then you're really free to build something and build something with purpose and clarity in a pioneering sense. You can't do that, I think, in most other countries, in at least 90% of them. And all those other countries that you aspire to live in will become very totalitarian very, very quickly, especially after this COVID stuff. It's been in 18 months. If you haven't changed your mind about immigration, yeah, anyway, the evidence is right there for you. Stick here, stick with the chaos, stick with incompetence, stick with load shedding. There are solutions to all these things. They don't need to be expensive. They don't need to be revolutionary. They don't need to be something you really think about. It really is just about extending a hand to your neighbor, extending a hand to other parents at your children's school, to extending a hand to other clubs in your area, just making yourself known, knowing the people who are around you, and supporting them, and let them support you. It starts with those small things, and it just explodes to something so much better. So if there's one thing you take away from this, like, just if you don't know your neighbor, just go introduce yourself.
Yeah, well,
How can
that's
we help each other?
exactly
That's all it is.
yeah, that's exactly what I tell my listeners when they ask, like, but how can I start building community where we'll atomize? I say, well, the first thing you can do is learn the name of your neighbor. That's very simple. That's something that everyone used to know back in the day. But nowadays, I think the majority of people listening here don't know the name of their neighbor. Start there, and everything will start falling into place from there. It's a very simple thing with a lot of dividends.
Yeah, and the lockdown was actually something that I rather not enjoyed. That's the wrong term, but it really made my life a lot simpler for the first time, just mentally. And in that time period since then, I've managed to build relationships with people that I trust, that provide good services to me for a reasonable price. And in return, they never ask for it. In return, I shill them a bit on my Twitter or things like that. But these are people who live within 5 kilometers, whose businesses are within 5 kilometers from my house. They come to my house to do the work. I don't have to go there. I mean, just today, FMB, not that I like them, delivered a license disc to my house that I completely forgot that I ordered from them. All they have to do is just deliver the license card, and I never have to go to the licensing department ever again. Like, it is all right there, and so easy to scale. You just have to take that first step.
Absolutely. Now, Roman, I'm going to do your shilling for you. If you want to subscribe to Roman's ideas, you want to check what he has to say on a daily basis, there's a link to his channel in the description called Morning Shot. I highly recommend his content. He's got my seal of approval, definitely. And you can also go follow him on Twitter. There's also a link in the description for all you lazy bastards that can't type in a title. So cheers, guys. Have a good one. If you're new to this channel, you can also subscribe and leave a like. It helps out a lot for these types of conversations. And I will be here once again real soon to bring you more types of conversations like this on relevant topics. So cheers, guys. Have a good one, and God bless.